Well, welcome back. This is Bill Bronchick, and this is the fourth session, fourth day for the Sub 2 Rockstar Challenge. Boy, we've covered a lot of information so far, and those of you who have been with me every day, I really applaud you, and I welcome your questions for the VIPs in the Q&A session, which will start at the top of the hour after this session is over. Today, we've got some really exciting stuff to cover. So let's get down to it. The recap, let's recap what we've covered so far for those of you who didn't attend Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, or missed some of the days, or this is your first day, welcome. We've covered so far the basics of buying sub 2, why this market is the ideal time for sub 2s. I really think with what's going on right now in the market with inflation and the economy stagnant, a lot of people are going into default because they're spending so much in gas and groceries they can't afford their mortgage anymore. And by the way, this is not just people who recently got 7.5% mortgages. Most of the people who are defaulting have the 5% and below mortgages. So 62%, as I said in the first day, 62% of mortgages are under 5% out there. Only a small percentage are 7 or 8%. And 1 in 4 is under 3%. So there's a lot of potential subject twos out there, a lot of defaults, a lot of people who frankly need our help, because that's what we're doing here. We're not stealing houses from people. We're not defrauding anybody, at least not the way I teach it, maybe the way some people teach it. We're being honest. We're finding out what their problem is, and we are helping them solve the problem. And in doing so, we make a profit, and that is win-win. If you can help someone and make a profit, what a great business to be in, right? I have 2 rules for every deal. 1 is I make a profit, and 2, just as important, I have to leave the seller in a better place than I found him. So if I'm only making money and I'm not helping the seller, I'm not doing the deal. And if I'm only helping the seller and I'm not making any money, I'm not doing the deal. I mean, it's a for-profit business. I mean, I do a lot of charity work and I give a lot to charitable organizations, and I recommend you do too as well. That's something, that is, not only good and honest and decent, it's biblical. I mean, you should be tithing into charitable organizations, helping the unfortunate. But it's got to be both, right? You got to help them and you got to make a profit. And I said earlier many times, win-win does not mean that they got everything and you got everything. That's impossible. Everybody compromises a little. So you're going to compromise as a buyer a little, maybe pay a little more than you wanted to, not get as good of a deal as you wanted to. And the seller's not going to get everything they wanted either. But as long as they think in their mind they got a fair shake, and it solves, in their mind, their problem, it's a win for them. And if you can make a profit, it's a win for you too. And that's really what win-win is all about. Okay, so we talked on Tuesday about marketing to find sub 2 sellers, which are fairly rare, but there are plenty of them out there. It's a numbers game, because 95% of people who are selling their house are usually with a realtor, and they want full price, and they want all their equity out in cash so they can buy another house. We're not dealing with those people. We're dealing with the 5% or less that most of them are not even for sale by owner or for sale by realtor. They're just in a situation that we have to find by marketing to and door knocking and mailers and so forth and networking to find people in the categories that might be in trouble. So divorce, foreclosure, behind in payments, tired landlord, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then we're going to propose an offer to them that solves their problem and also makes us money. So they may not be actually selling the property for sale by owner, but they should be. And that's our job, to enlighten them to why that's a good idea. We talked about analyzing subject to deals, what makes a good sub 2 deal. On Wednesday, we discovered that not every deal that's a sub 2 deal, probably less than 1 in 4 subject to deals or potential deals are not deals at all. A lot of people, and we'll talk about this tomorrow, by the way, a lot of people wholesale subject to deals. A lot of people are wholesalers and want to be wholesalers, and they're doing it the Stone Age way. It's funny that the We Buy Ugly Houses people, their logo is a little caveman. Because the way that, and most of those, by the way, are wholesalers. People who have those franchises, they buy a lot of properties and they wholesale most of them. 12, 13, 14, 15 a month, some of them. Wholesaling in that way, which is find an ugly junker house, pay a low price, and then wholesale it for 5, 10, or 15 grand profit to someone who's going to fix it up and resell it retail. That is a very limited model in today's market. First of all, if you're wholesaling cash deals to other investors, most investors don't want to fix and flip. They want to fix and hold. So if you're wholesaling subject to deals to, let's say, landlords, you're going to find many more deals to pick from and many more people to wholesale them to. And we'll talk more about that tomorrow. Okay, I just wanted to give you a little preview. We talked about common subject to deal scenarios yesterday: low equity, high equity, current, not current, and so forth. And if they're not current, pay attention. I'm glad you're here today, because if they're in foreclosure, then you've got to deal with a lot of regulations and laws that, if you don't, will get you in big trouble. So pay attention today and stay the whole time. Negotiating subject to deals we talked about yesterday on the phone and in person. We talked about the importance of, number one, having a phone script, and number two, don't ever negotiate price and terms on the phone. The goal of the phone call is to get an in-person appointment where you can get a contract. Okay, if you negotiate over the phone and all the deal, the terms, and then try to e-serve them, e-sign contracts and all that, you're just being lazy. Okay, you will close maybe a few deals that way. And maybe someone out there I'm talking to says, well, I do it that way all the time. Well, good for you. I'm glad it's working. For most people, the vast majority of them, you will do many more deals if you meet more people in person than doing it by text, by email, by electronic means. Okay, I know we're in an electronic world, but real estate is still a people, person, trust, likability thing. Okay, a lot of people were afraid that Zillow et al. Was going to put realtors out of business. That will never happen. People are chicken to negotiate, shake hands, meet people, show houses. That's, realtors good realtors, that is, will always have a job. And finally, why you need a phone script. We talked about that again, and a subject to team of professionals that could walk you through it. And we'll talk about that more tomorrow, who should be on your subject to deal team and what you're going to need to get it done. Okay, so first, before we get started, I wanted to talk a little bit about a separate topic that's kind of related, and that is, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. A lot of you watching, and a lot of people on social media, you may have read a book or two, or hang out on chat groups and discussion forums and get little bits and pieces of information from webinars and seminars and so forth. And if you've never done a deal, and that's all you have is bits and pieces of information, then, you could be a walking time bomb if you don't know what you're doing. Subject to is a very technical thing. You have to have the skills, the knowledge, the players, the contracts, and know how to do it, and know how to negotiate it, and know how to paper it up, most importantly, to make sure you disclose everything that needs to be disclosed to the seller and so forth. So if you're just doing this kind of bit by bit learning as you go, DIY, and that's mostly men I'm talking to now, because women are smart. Men go, I'll figure it out. I know where I'm going. And the woman's going, can we stop and ask for directions? Men, listen to your women. Stop and ask for directions when it comes to real estate. Okay, so the conundrum here is sort of like the two-handed economist. On the one hand, we have ideas and intentions, okay, of what we want to do in this business. And on the other hand, you have results and success. And in the middle, you have that gap. So how do you bridge the gap between what you want to do, what you set out to do, what you dream to do, which is, not just make money. I mean, real estate is about lifestyle. It's not about how many houses you have, how much money you make, how much cash flow you have. Those things are important, but it's what does that do for you? What does that do for your family? What does that do for your retirement? What does that do for your lifestyle? So think about it in those terms and how we can make real estate do that for you. I mean, I love real estate in the sense that I love negotiating and transacting difficult and creative deals, but owning properties and being a landlord isn't that much fun. It's especially when things blow up and you have legal issues or bad tenants or, cash flow issues. It's like any business. I mean, it's not always fun, but it's what real estate has allowed me to do with my life for me and my family. And for those I can help, that's really what is my passion. And I hope it's yours as well. So we have that on the one hand. On the other hand, how do we bridge the gap to results and success? Now, there's a couple of ways to do that. One of them is to take notes on these webinars and seminars. And some of you went to VIP, which is really smart because you can ask more questions and get more knowledge. And I think about probably half of the people who were VIPs are a little more experienced. So they were asking really good high-level questions, which I like, which means I get the idea they've done one or more of these deals before, or they have the requisite knowledge to do a deal. Okay, those of you who didn't do VIP and you're just listening to the free part of this, you're missing a lot of the sort of like the devil's in the details thing. All right, there's only so much I can cover for 45 minutes a day in 5 days. That's just not a lot of time. I used to do online all day weekend workshops. That's exhausting for all of us. Let's be frank. The Zoom, the COVID thing is over. Get off the Zoom nipple. I am doing live seminars, and I do have one coming up basically in, let's say, the next one. I just wanted to tell you about that. I'll send out some emails, but it's last weekend in October. I'm doing a foreclosure boot camp. Some of which will be about subject to, because foreclosure deals are a source of subject to, but there's many, many other ways to profit in foreclosure. I'll email you about that. But in this sense, the conundrum of how do we get from here to here and bridge that gap, if you're just going to workshops and mini webinars and reading chat stuff online or social media, and writing scribbly little notes, you're not going to bridge the gap that way. What you're getting is like the digits of a phone number, but they're not in the right order. You ever feel like that? That you've got all the little pieces, but you don't know which order they go. And if you don't get your numbers in the right order, your phone call won't go through. Okay. And likewise, you won't get your subject to deal done first or next, whichever it may be. So, for every one of us, there's a place. Some of you, it's under the bed. Some of you, it's up in the closet. Some of you, it's down in the basement, maybe in the garage. That plastic bin, the one you got at Target, where webinar and seminar notes go to die. Let's be honest with each other. So if you're just taking little scribbly notes and getting little bits of piece of information, you're not going to bridge the gap. It's not going to work. Or if you do it without asking for help, do it at your peril. Okay, because you could screw up these deals pretty badly, especially after what I tell you today. I hope you really take it to heart, because there's a lot of pitfalls in this that I'm going to identify. You could take an investor to lunch. I love that one. I used to run a RIA group, a Real Estate Investors Association in Denver. And we had like 3,800 members. We had monthly meetings. I ran it for 18 years, hundreds of people at meetings, and people would come and go. Maybe 20% were regulars. The other 80% were just tire kickers. And people would say to me, "Can I take you to lunch and pick your brain?" I just laugh. I mean, I'm sure some of you who are watching or who are experienced know that they know what I'm talking about. First of all, what lunch do you think you could buy me? My hourly rate is $4.75. If I have to go to lunch with you, that triples. Okay, it better be Dom Perignon and lobster. And even so, I mean, reality. What could you get from someone in an hour? It's like digits of a phone number. You're not going to learn it all in an hour. So you have to be willing to take the time to really get this stuff. I'm not saying you have to know 100% of it before you make your first offer, but you got to have a base of knowledge before you go out and do these deals. It's not like doing fix and flips or rentals. Subject to deals are a little more involved. So what I put together is a sub-2 support system that I just put together for this event. Many of you know I have products for sale, and many of you know I do have coaching, which is a little more on the pricey side, not relative to what's out there, but it's a substantial investment and worth it. By the way, those who are my coaching students who are watching, can attest to that, I'm sure. But I put this special affordable program together to jumpstart people who are beginner to intermediate. So on a scale of 1 to 10, if you're like 1 through 6, this is for you. If you're like 7, 8, 9, 10, and you've done a dozen subject to deals, this is probably beyond your basic, beyond what you already know. Under what you already know. So it's probably not appropriate for you, but maybe you want to reach out to us about regular coaching programs that we can start you at a much higher level. But those of you who are like 1 to 6, this is definitely for you. Okay, so first it comes with 18 videos on subject to, with 18 MP3 audios that you can stream online or download to your phone or player or whatever, burn to CD, listen in your car, as well as a sub-2 course manual in PDF that you could print out and read on your iPad or print out and put it in a notebook, whatever. We don't ship things anymore physically. I did that for many years. We wasted a lot of vinyl. We don't do that anymore. Everything's electronic now. We have state-specific forms and contracts, so that's really important. So whatever state you're in, I've got a state-specific contract for you. And if you're a realtor, if you're a broker or agent, you probably shouldn't use my contract. You should probably use the standard broker contract and the addenda. So I have for every contract I have in the training, I have an addendum that you can add on to any standard local broker form and make that into the same thing. So you could use that for doing your own deals. I think if you're a broker, you should use the standard broker form in my addendum rather than my standalone contract. So we have contracts, forms, disclosures, very important disclosures to give. We'll talk about checklists for due diligence on subject to deals. We have 12 weekly action-oriented assignments. So you're going to get assignments to do each week, specific things, and I'll give you a checklist, and I want you to do them. Now, you don't have to hand them in like assignments. I'm not your teacher, but it's for your benefit to keep you on a strict, disciplined program of consistent action towards your goal. And consistency and accountability is what's really important in this program. We have twice monthly, so 2 times a month. I have a live, me doing it, Q&A by Zoom. So we'll have a Q&A meeting by Zoom, not a webinar, where you can ask any question you want about subject to, or talk about your deals, ask questions, or just listen in to other people's stuff. You get unlimited deal review during the 3 months. So I have a deal review form in the portal for the subject to system, where you fill out the information, upload your documents, pictures, everything, and it goes right to me, and I will personally review the deal myself, and I will email you back. Now, 9 out of 10 times, I'm probably going to tell you no good. All right, that's maybe unfair. 7 out of 10 times, I'll tell you it's no good. 1 out of 10 will be good, and the other 2 or 3, I'm going to say I need more information, and you need to get more information so we can evaluate, and I'll help you evaluate the deals, and that's an unlimited thing during the 3-month support system. So that's very valuable to have someone with 32 years experience who's also an attorney and trained a lot of people how to do this, to look over your shoulder, make sure you're doing it right. You also there's a sub-2 community where everyone can post questions and chat and schmooze, and for support and advice, which I monitor and answer questions myself in all the time. The total value of this package is $16,997, basically $17,000 if you bought all this separately. You don't have to pay anywhere near that, because I'm going to do the deal now. $1997. That, my friends, is a bargain. It's a no-brainer. It's a steal. If you do one deal, I talked about this yesterday. Someone asked me on Q&A, what's the average profit you make on a subject to deal? I said, well, if I don't have at least like 50,000 equity and or 5,000 a year cash flow, which you figure that's a 10% return, that's worth 50 grand, basically 5,000 a year cash flow, right? So if you don't make at least 50,000 in equity and or cash flow, it's a no deal anyway. Okay. So if you spend $2,000 and do one deal in this 3 months, that is awesome. That is awesome. I'm hoping that many of you will do 2 or 3 deals in the first month. Now, some of you honestly may not do a deal in your first 3 months. Make them take you a little longer. And that's, maybe you just don't have the time commitment, or you have reservations, or you're scared or whatever, but this will help you get the confidence that you need to know that you're doing it right. So I'll encourage you more to take action and make offers and make deals. That's the bottom line, and change your financial picture for you and your family. A special bonus is when you get the program. And by the way, this offer expires on Monday. All right. This is not a forever offer. This expires on Monday. Bonus number 1 is the killer phone script I talked about. And I have an audio and video instructions demonstrating how to use the script, which is, that by itself is worth $2,000 right there. If you can learn to answer calls, find out the information, negotiate a deal, or negotiate an appointment, boy, that's worth it alone. That's free. Bonus number 2, you get my e-study course online called Marketing to Motivated Sellers, which is more than I talked on Tuesday about finding sellers. I have double that in this course. So I have sample forms, sample letters, sample ads, what to say, following up on leads, how to analyze and organize your leads and keep track of them and so forth. Great course. And then bonus number 3, my Power Real Estate Negotiating course, which is, again, is going to step up your skills in negotiating win-win deals with people in subject to. Because frankly, these are the hardest ones to negotiate. Getting someone to deed you over the house with no recourse to get it back and trust you to make their payments, you got to be good. You got to know how to answer objections, and you got to know how to answer just about every thing they throw at you, and this course will arm you with that information. It's a $1,500 value for the bonuses, so the total package is worth, $9 million, or I don't know, I can't add it all up, but it's just $19.97. It's kind of like a turnkey franchises for subject to investors. Why do people buy franchises? Why do people spend $400,000 to buy a Subway, which is like a C- sandwich at best? I'm a Jimmy John's guy, or Quiznos, but it's not a good product, but it's a good business. And people buy those types of franchises for 2 reasons: systems and support. The systems, they figured out what works and what doesn't work, and they give you support to help you succeed. That's why people buy franchises. Now, Joe's New York Deli, or Anthony's New York Deli down the road, is probably far superior to Subway. And I would go there in a New York minute because I'm from New York. I mean, I want a real sandwich. Corned beef, roast beef, big fat sandwich on a Kaiser bun. You don't get that at Subway, fresh stuff. But that business has about a 2% chance of success compared to Subway. That's why people buy franchises. Let's look at franchise model versus DIY. Out of 100 businesses, 4 will be alive after 1 year. That's statistics. Out of 100 franchises, get this, 85% will be successful in running after 3 years. So you look at how much more successful the model is of having systems and support, which is why people spend $400,000. You don't have to spend $400,000. I'm not selling you a franchise for real estate. I'm just giving you the analogy. It's $19.97. Now it's 3 months. Many of you should be able to do a deal within 3 months. Some of you might take a little longer. Some of you might do 2 or 3 deals in the 3 months training. But I wanted to make something, get started now, exactly what to do, and get you up and running to get your first or next subject to deal, and doing it right, doing it profitably, legally, and ethically. So you don't have to go here now because I'm going to cover the material, but write this down, legalwiz.com, my website, /SSS. It's not the Nazi thing. That's the SS. SSS, Subject to Support System. Okay, SSS. And I'm limiting this to 19 people because my time is really getting tight. Mostly because, one, I'm doing more deals lately. Two, I'm slammed with clients and brokers wanting to do buy and sell subject to deals. I'm closing like 4 of these a week. It's crazy how many more deals are being done and how much more mainstream this is becoming, which is really encouraging, but that's why I can only do it for 19. I can't open this up to everybody. So be one of the first 19 to sign up and get into the program. All right, let's get on to today's topic now. Subject to due diligence. So what do you do once you have the property under contract? So we get that deal under contract when we've met with the seller, we've marketed, we've had a phone conversation, we met with them, we negotiated the terms, we get it under contract. We're going to do a thorough title search. Don't do it without a title search. Don't close it. Do not go to someone's house with a quitclaim deed and sign it, have them sign it, notarize it, and you give them cash or whatever, and then just go record it. That is really risky. Now, I've done that before, but it's a rare circumstance. Now, you don't have the experience that I have. If you're 1 to 6, you should not be doing that. You should be going under contract and doing a title search like you would on any other deal to make sure there are no other liens and so forth. Get a copy of the note and the mortgage or deed of trust. Okay, read it. Make sure, is it a fixed or is it an adjustable rate? I took someone's word for it on a fixed once. It turned out to be an adjustable. It was wrong. Okay. Does it have a prepayment penalty in it? That's something you want to know if you're going to pay it off in a few years. Definitely close at a title company or attorney's office. Do not close this on your own outside of that normal chain of doing things. All right. So you got to do it right. Do it in the normal way. And at closing, we give plenty of disclosures. I have some really tight disclosures you'll get with the subject to support system. And by the way, those of you who have my one of my courses on subject to, it's in there. Now, I know you're already asking, do I get a discount since I already bought the subject to course or the marketing course? And the sad answer is no, you don't, because that's only part of the subject to support system. That's just, I just want everybody to have it so they have the base of knowledge to work off of, but it's everything else that's the real value, especially the deal review. Okay. But to be fair, if you bought it this week, watching me online, email me and I'll give you a little bit of a discount. All right. But if you bought it like a year ago, forget it. All right. And here's a killer. Nobody does this. You need a durable, irrevocable, limited power of attorney at closing from the seller. This will allow you to deal with their lender, the insurance company. I even used it once to negotiate a zoning board appeal for a variance that I needed. It's very important because a lot of people get this form called an authorization to release lender information. And that's only good for that lender. What if they change servicers or change lenders? They sell the loan. You're out of luck. So you got to have that limited, durable, irrevocable power of attorney. Okay. Let's talk about some of the pitfalls involved in subject to. Very few people do this, by the way. A lot of these marketing gurus, and I call them marketing gurus instead of real estate gurus, because most of these people on social media, I sometimes I watch the feeds off of Facebook that come from Instagram and TikTok and YouTube, and I just laugh. I just laugh at some of the ridiculous advice being given out there. And these people are obviously either zero or very limited real estate experience, but really good marketers. There's a lot of them out there. You got to be careful. I've been doing this for 32 years. Okay. And if someone, by the way, if someone hasn't been through a crash at least once, if not twice, you don't know nothing. If someone started investing in subject to deals like 5 years ago, they don't know nothing Because until you've been through a down cycle like 2008, I've been through 3, and I've invested in 12 states. So I have a lot of this up and down stuff. And by the way, I never filed bankruptcy once, and I never walked away from a loan, and I never gave a deed in lieu, even when the market crashed. So what are some of the subject to pitfalls? If the property is in default or in foreclosure, now, not most, I would say about half the states passed these foreclosure protection statutes within the last 10, 12 years. California had it for years. It was called foreclosure consultant law, where you have to give someone a certain disclosure. You have to give them a right to rescind the contract. In my state, Colorado, it's 3 days. In some states, it's 5. I think in Maryland, it's 7. California, it's 5. But you have to give them a right to rescind the contract. Now, in most states, it only applies to people where the foreclosure has been filed, meaning the list pendants or the notice of default. But if they're just late, it doesn't apply. In Colorado, where I am, and in Illinois and a couple other states, it applies as soon as they miss one payment. So if they're one payment behind, you have to comply by giving them required disclosures, like a certain font size in your contract, like 12 point, not 10 point. You have to give them a rescission notice. You have to give them the right to rescind. You have to give them all these disclosures. And if you don't, they can cancel the contract up to 3 years later. Up to 3 years later, if you didn't give them the proper disclosures. Also, if you do it repeatedly, it's a crime. In Colorado, it's a felony. It's a felony. You can go to jail for doing this for up to a year. Okay. And on top of all that, if you don't give them the proper disclosures, they could rescind pretty much at any time. And a lot of people don't even know this. They're signing up deals that are 3 payments behind, and they go, well, it doesn't apply. It's not in foreclosure. Read the statute. In Colorado, it applies when there are 1 payment in default. Got to comply with that. Okay, so you got to know the foreclosure statute. Let's say the seller files for bankruptcy. Now, this is important. If the seller closed with you, I mean, they transferred the deed, you did the closing, the property's yours, the deed's recorded, it's all done. And then the seller files for Chapter 7 or 13 or 11, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It's irrelevant to you, okay? Because that asset no longer belongs to him. Now, the debt belongs to him. So a Chapter 7 would discharge him from liability on that loan, which is actually a good thing if they file bankruptcy. Because remember, you didn't sign the note, so you're not liable to the bank. And then if the seller files Chapter 7, he's not liable either for the loan. So if it goes into default, you don't make the payments, neither of you are liable to the bank. Now, you may be liable to the seller. That's a different story. But that's better than being liable to U.S. Bank. If the seller is in bankruptcy, currently in a Chapter 7, you cannot do the deal. You can't do a deal. When someone files for Chapter 7 bankruptcy, everything he owns, every asset now belongs to the bankruptcy, what's called the bankruptcy estate. Sort of like when someone dies, everything belongs to their estate. Okay? There is only one person who can sign off on a death estate. That's what we call the executor or personal representative. In a bankruptcy, it's called the trustee in bankruptcy. They're in charge of the bankruptcy estate. So you have to go and find the seller's, case information, or ask them who's your trustee, call the trustee or go to their office and say, listen, we got a property worth $400, they owe $375, they're in default, there's no equity, would you release the deal out of the bankruptcy estate so we can buy it subject to? And most of the time they will. Now, if there's a lot of equity, they may not, because there's other creditors who may want that. But on most sub-2 deals, there is no equity, and that's the way it's done. So if they're currently in bankruptcy, be careful. Do not do the deal. A seller dies. Now, as long as he dies after closing, that's okay. If he dies before closing, then you can't close the deal until the estate is probated and the representative can sign the closing docs. But if they die after you bought the property, no problem. I've had sellers die on me. It's your property. You're making the payments. The seller dies. There's no relevancy to the issue. Okay. Now, the only issue would be if it's a reverse mortgage. Those are due. Actually, they're due when they're dead, but they're due as soon as they move out. So try to take a subject to on a reverse mortgage unless you're only going to do it for like 6 months to buy it, fix it, and flip it. Otherwise, they'll call it due. The seller wants the property back. I've had represented many investors who said, I got a call from an attorney or a seller or their broker like 6 years later, and they want the property back. Now, if your disclosures and your contract was done right, they don't have a prayer. They don't have a prayer. But I've had clients who just got a quitclaim deed over a kitchen table, or they closed it without any special disclosures, and it became a big litigation mess. So, whether or not you're going to survive that challenge entirely hinges on how good your paperwork and disclosures are. Broker disclosures, if you're a real estate broker or agent. Now, if you're doing the deal yourself, you have to do everything that would be required of you if you were representing someone. So in terms of disclosing that you're an agent, or even if you're just like a 30% partner in an LLC that's buying the property, you still got to disclose that. Okay. I would use the standard broker form with my addendum, and maybe even a little higher disclosure. Now, if you're a broker or agent and someone called you on a listing appointment and you went to go list the property and then said, I could subject to this deal myself, and you switch hats, be very, very careful, especially if you've already signed a listing agreement and then decided to buy it subject to. I'm not saying don't do it. It's you really got to have good disclosures for that. And those of you who are in my subject to support system, I will provide those for you. Okay. And finally, the one that everyone's been waiting to discuss, the due on sale clause. So I'd say just about every 99.999% of mortgages and deeds of trust, the lien on the property, says in the event you transfer the property, the lender has the right to accelerate the mortgage. Accelerate means demand immediate payoff. Like within 30 days, they'll send you a letter saying you transferred ownership, you got 30 days, pay it all off. All of it. Okay? Now, so many people are so worried about this. Oh my God, there's so much misinformation, so many, old wives' tales floating around about this. This started in the late 70s, early 80s, when interest rates were like 18% and you wanted to take your neighbor's property subject to a 4% loan. Of course, the lender is going to call the loan due. They're losing 14 points. Okay. We're in a different market now. Okay. Those were a lot of small banks, savings and loans, and they were on top of it. They serviced their own product. They knew what was going on. Now we've got big conglomerate banks. We got Wall Street portfolios, and we got servicers who are separate from that. And no one really knows what's going on. So for the most part, banks either don't know and, more importantly, don't care, because interest rates on the market are in the sevens. And if you take over a 4% loan, is 3.5% spread enough for them to call a loan due? I don't think so. And I haven't seen it, by the way. For 32 years, I've been doing this, and I've probably done north of 2,000 deals that had a due on sale triggered. Okay. And I can count on one hand how many times a lender said, that's it, I'm calling it due. And some of them that did call it due, I told my client, let's just call their bluff. Just ignore them. And all but one didn't do it. They just didn't follow up. They sent a letter, and then they sent another one, and then they left it alone. Why would you call it a loan that's being paid with no equity? Defaults are up on mortgages. When lenders have default rates that are too high, the federal agencies make them carry more cash reserves to count for that. And they don't want to do that. They're losing money. So there's no reason to call on a performing loan. So most of the time they don't care. And by the way, the due on sale clause is a clause in a deed of trust or mortgage that allows the lender to call due the remaining balance of the loan. It is not automatic. The lender must take affirmative action. What does that mean? It's not due on sale. They call it a due on sale clause, but a loan is not due on sale. It's due on sale or transfer if the lender chooses to do something about it. chooses, the lender may, this is how it reads, may at its option call all sums due and payable. May. What may they also do at their option? Nothing. And in my experience, the odds of the lender calling it due are extremely low, and the reward commensurate to the risk is very, very high. Now, if you don't want to do this, then don't do it. I'm not going to twist your arm. You want to go put 20% down, qualify for a loan, pay 7.5%, 8% interest, sign personally on a 30-year mortgage, be my guest. Or you could take subject to someone's loan for a few grand or 10 grand or 15 grand at a 3% rate and have positive cash flow, make a lot of money. And what happens if they catch you? There is no due on sale jail. It's not a crime. I've heard people say, this is illegal. Really? What law is that? No one can cite me a law, federal, state, or otherwise, because there is none. No one's ever been arrested for doing this. Remember, who violated the due on sale, if anybody? The borrower, i.e. the seller, not you. They had the contract they signed with the bank on the mortgage. And by the way, there's nothing in a standard mortgage that requires anybody to tell the lender when they do it. Now, if the lender asks, don't lie. Right? Don't lie, because that could be a crime. That could be loan fraud. But simply keeping your mouth shut is not a crime. Okay, and it's not an actionable crime in civil court, an actionable cause of action in civil court either. Let's talk about some bogus subject to practices. I know you've been waiting for me to get to this. I teased you a little bit about that in my promo, because there's a lot of marketing geniuses out there, and I give them credit because they are good marketers. But it is apparent to me either they don't know what they're doing or they don't care, or both. Okay, I'm not naming names. That's not my style. I'll just tell you what I've seen being promoted, and I've seen, I've represented a lot of subject to sellers. Broker comes to me and says, my client's selling subject to, here's the offer. And I read the contract and go, what idiot guru drew this one? And I've seen the same contract over and over. So I got a pretty good idea who it is, but I'm not naming names. I'm just going to talk about practices. Putting a deed in escrow. This is my favorite one. So you as the buyer say to the seller, who says, how do I know you're going to make my payment? What if you don't make my payment? Well, Mr. Seller, I'll execute a quit claim deed. We'll put it in escrow with a title company or attorney. And it says that in the escrow instructions, if I miss a payment, then they give you my deed and you can go record it and my interest in the property is over and now it's yours again. That's not enforceable. That's not enforceable. Now, if you don't object as the buyer, which is the right thing to do, you should give it back to them anyway. No problem. But it's not enforceable. It's like people ask me this all the time. If I do like a hard money loan to somebody, can I put a deed in escrow so I can circumvent foreclosure and it just goes back to me? No. There's an expression in the law that goes like this. It's a mouthful. Equity abhors a forfeiture. Equity abhors, A-B-H-O-R-S, abhors, loathes a forfeiture. Meaning courts don't like it when you circumvent the rights that someone has. So putting a deed in escrow to erase someone's interest without a lawsuit is unenforceable. And I think that if you tell a seller that this is his protection and you know what I just said, you're engaging in deceptive trade practices, which is going to get you in a lot of hot water. Charging a seller a large sum of punishment money for canceling the deal. This is what I've seen in a couple of contracts. So it says that if the seller wants out, he's got to pay like $40,000 to the buyer to cancel the contract. That is disgusting. It's unethical. And it's also probably unethical. No judge is going to enforce that. If they want out, goodbye. It's not a cash deal. This is a subject to deal, remember. All right, if someone's uncomfortable and they get cold feet, let them out. No penalty. Making the seller sign documents making you a property manager or other title that you're trying to fool a lender whose loan you took subject to. I've seen that too. So you're making the seller sign a property management agreement or some other, a power of attorney is okay, but some sort of other agreement that makes you like a financial manager, a property manager. So if the lender calls, oh, I'm just a property manager, that's a lie. That's unethical, and it is probably illegal. Asking people for private money second mortgages to fund your deal without securities law compliance. This is another one. Now, people go along, let's say that you promised the seller, X dollars, like $10,000 subject to, right? And you don't have $10,000. So you go to some friend of a friend or some coworker at work and say, lend me $10,000 and I'll give you a promissory note secured by a second lien against the property behind the loan you're taking subject to. So you're walking in with no money down. Now, that sounds good in theory. It's creative. But if you solicit money, private money from people who aren't already, private money and investors or in that business, you're probably violating securities regulations, state and federal. And I know many people who have gotten nailed on this badly. So do not, or tread lightly if you're going to do this. If it's your father you're borrowing money from, or your uncle, all right. But if you're going out to strangers, do not do that without first talking to an attorney and drafting up what's called an offering memorandum. And also along that line, brokering private money loans without a license. So if borrowing the private money is a securities violation, then brokering that private money is a violation because you need a securities broker-dealer license. You understand what I just said? You can broker hard money loans because the hard money lender is in that business. But if if you're like going to people and saying, listen, I have people who will borrow money from you and convince them to be a private money lender, and they're not already doing that, you're violating securities regulations. And you're violating the law by not having a broker-dealer license and getting a commission for that. All right. So there's much more about this I could say, but I have a video on my website about private money lending and all this. Just be careful. I'm not saying never do it. Just saying if you're going to do it, you got to comply. And the other thing, this is just dumb. I've seen it. So a couple of people promoting this, lending to others for down payments. That means the investor doesn't even have $5,000 or $2,000 for a down payment, and there's a course or something or training where they're encouraging you to lend money to those people in exchange for interest or part of the deal or whatever. That is monumentally stupid. If you lend money, and especially without a personal guarantee, that's what they're doing. So Investor LLC wants to buy a property from seller sub 2 or whatever, and that investor asks you to lend them $2,000 for the earnest money, and they promise to give you, $1,000 back plus the $2,000 after the deal is done. How stupid can you be? That is dumb. What if the buyer violates the contract and you don't get the earnest money back? You're out of luck. And people are actually teaching this. It's bad. I'm not saying it's stupid for the investor who's buying the deal. I think it's stupid to teach it as a practice to people to seek out saying, hey, I'm here, I'll lend you your down payment. How monumentally stupid is that? Just really dumb and risky. So subject to best practices, and we'll wrap it up with this. Ooh, we went long today. Truthful marketing. Be truthful in your marketing. Don't lie. Everything is truthful. Truthful answers to difficult questions. If someone asks you a question that there's no easy answer for, tell them the truth. How do I know you're going to make my payments? You don't. No. Oh, you could trust me. I've done this lots of times when you know you never have. That's a lie. Don't make oral promises that aren't in the written contract. See, it happened many times where I was representing a buyer or seller, and I look at the contract and the party tells me, well, the other guy said that he'd do this. I go, it's not in the contract. Well, he promised me. I go, it ain't in the contract. It's not in the contract. It's not enforceable. So don't make oral promises on the side like, hey, I'll give you a few bucks on the side. You have my word. Don't do that. If a seller gets cold feet, don't charge them $47,000 to cancel a contract. Walk away. There's plenty of other deals out there. Don't put a gun to someone's head. And do not lie or mislead a lender who inquires about a deed transfer. If you get caught, you're caught. You either ignore the lender or you call them up and you negotiate with them. Give me a year and I'll refi or sell it. Don't lie, okay? And say, I'm the property manager and it's put in a trust. We didn't talk about land trust. Maybe if we have time tomorrow, we'll talk about that. And another one is putting it in a land trust. Like the seller's name is Joe Smith, and you put it into the Smith Family Trust, but you own the Smith Family Trust. That's deceptive, okay? And if you can't make the payments, that's a typo. It says sell the property or give it back to the seller. All right, just give it. Forget the deed and escrow part. I'm assuming you're all good people and you'll do the right thing, which is don't promise them the deed and escrow. Just give it to them back or sell it and pay off their loan or refinance it. Do the right thing. Trust me. Being honest in this business, having good, honest, ethical business practices sometimes may cost you money, but your reputation is worth a whole lot more. And being able to look at yourself in the mirror before you go to sleep at night and eventually answer to your maker is an important thing. You know, there's like a ninth circle of hell for people who lie on subject to deals, I think. I don't know. All right. So just a reminder now, you can go to legalwiz.com/SSS, first 19 people only, for the subject to support system. It's only $19.97. It's a limited time offer and there's a limited amount of people. So go check it out. I'll tell you a little more about it tomorrow. And tomorrow we're going to talk about getting started in the business, how to get this rolling. I'm going to talk about wholesaling subject to deals. And I'm going to bring in a couple of my students, by the way, who have done wholesale deals and, you know, let them tell your story. I mean, I could tell you about all my subject to deals, but I know many of you can say, well, that's easy for you, Bill. You're an attorney. The fact that I'm an attorney makes me very valuable on this topic, but that's not what it was hustle that made me money. Okay. But you could do it too. But if you hear some mere mortals, I put on my pants one leg at a time, just like you do. But some people just feel like, you know, hey, you could do it, but I can't do it. So let me bring in some people I'll show you who are just like you, who have done them and made a lot of money. All right. Thanks for joining me. VIPs, I'll see you in 3 minutes. Let's give me till 5 after, because I gotta just take a quick brain break, get some water, use the facilities, and I'll be on at about 5 minutes after on the chat. If you have any questions, by the way, about the subject to support system, and feel free to email any pre-purchase questions. Thank you.